Good evening. I'm Corvallis Advocate Editor-in-Chief Stevie Beiswanger, and co-moderating with me tonight is our publisher Steve Schultz. Welcome to tonight's CitySpeak Forum. This evening, we will be focusing on the recovery of our community's local businesses as they seek to regain their footing. CitySpeak is presented by the Corvallis Advocate, which offers daily news online and, in non-pandemic times, a twice-monthly deep dive print publication, along with live forums and storytelling nights. City Speaks are co-presented by City Club of Corvallis, a volunteer-run nonprofit organization seeking to present a diversity of viewpoints and constructive dialogue. Steve?
Thank you, Stevie. I am Steve Schultz. I am the publisher. You can support forums like these by donating or subscribing, excuse me, by donating or subscribing to the Corvallis Advocate. If you are not a subscriber, it's only $5 for unlimited online access, $5 monthly. There's services available over and above that, or you can donate over and above that if you are so inclined. Really, at $5 a month, it's less than a hamburger, and it's an opportunity to support a constructive brand of journalism that's owned and run by local people, and that's increasingly really just rare nowadays. So we really do appreciate those that do step in and support. Along those lines, I want to express appreciation to our current subscribers, our current donors, and of course our business supporters. A special shout out to the OSU School of Liberal Arts and Communications. Peak Sports has really stepped in, committed to local journalism. First Alternative Co-op, and the Sustainability Coalition. They make tonight possible. Stevie.
Thanks. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce this evening's panelists. Joining us are Benton County Commissioner Zan Ojero, Economic Development Manager with City of Corvallis, Kate Porche, CEO of the Corvallis Foundry Collective, Brad Addig, and owner of the Inkwell, Pat Lampton, who also serves as a board member of the city's Economic Development Advisory Committee, as well as at Citizens Bank. Thank you to all of our panelists for taking time out of what must be incredibly busy schedules. In a few moments, we'll turn to audience questions. To ask a question while we're live, viewers are welcome to comment on our Facebook's live stream of the event, which can be found on our Facebook page, the Corvallis Advocate. Questions can also be emailed to cityspeak@corvallisadvocate.com. Again, that's cityspeak@corvallisadvocate.com. For the moment, let's start with some introductory questions from our editorial board. And these first questions are for you. The state's decision to allow Benton County to reopen came quicker than many people expected. Could you talk about that for a moment?
That's a wide open question. Yes, it did come much faster than we expected. We had expected that the process of review of our application by the Oregon Health Authority might take a while, and that we would have a period where we could allow businesses to adjust to the fact that doors are open again. But that's not quite how it happened, and it felt kind of like an avalanche, maybe, of okay, now we're open and ready, get set, go. I know that must have felt really, really challenging as a business person, trying to be ready to open your doors. I think that what I would like to say is that we hope that people don't feel pressured to open too soon. I know that many businesses already have, but that it's probably wiser to take things in a measured way, as measured as possible, and be ready for customers with as many safeguards in place as possible to provide for physical distancing, sanitation, hygiene, and so on. Aside from that, I can say that the county itself wasn't ready to open immediately upon receiving the news, and we will not be opening our buildings for service again to all of our residents until the 26th of this month. We have been continuing to do business the whole time of the stay-at-home order, but we will only start welcoming people back in to do in-person business as of Tuesday, the 26th.
Well, thank you. Next question is, what does the county have in place for small businesses, and is there anything in the pipeline that may help with this?
I am actually going to defer that question to Zan Ojero, number 2, otherwise known as Kate Portia, who is not only the Economic Development Officer and lead for the city of Corvallis, but also for Benton County.
Sure.
Thanks, Zan. Yeah, I'm logged on. I'm the lesser known Zan Ojero. How about that? But no, in terms of items we have in place for small businesses, we've got a number of things. In fact, Benton County just put out a loan program, which just closed on Friday, so we were able to help a number of businesses with that. But through the Emergency Operations Center, where my entire team has been working, we're putting together a Benton County business guide that we're going to be pushing out this week with information and guidance for the businesses in the different sectors that they need in terms of, like Zan was saying again, reopening responsibly and finding ways and methods that they can reopen, get back in business, but to keep their customers safe and to keep their employees safe. But get the economy going, which is everything that we are trying to balance. So that guide is going to be out this week. Also, Benton County has set up 2 things. We've got an email address where if businesses have questions, they can shoot an email over and we'll get you answers you need to get reopened. And that email is benton.reopening@gmail.com, and I can type that into the comments here in just a sec. We also have a hotline for folks too. Again, I'm just going to consult my notes, make sure I get it right, but the number is 541-766-6120, and that's staffed Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. But we're trying to create these channels and have opportunities for businesses to chime in if they're needing some more information, some direction to get what they need to reopen safely.
Was that number, can you repeat that number one more time?
Oh, you bet, you bet. It's 541-766-6120.
Okay.
Open 8 to 5 Monday through Friday for the hotline.
Zan, I'll bounce back to you. The governor has made clear that state revenues will take a big hit and to expect budget reductions. How might this impact the county?
It could have a really strong effect on the county. We are planning on several different scenarios for budget cuts, given the decrease in income tax revenues that we project at the state level. We are looking at an 8% or a 15% or as much as a 25% reduction in the state dollars that we receive. And that could mean that anywhere from a $4.4 million decrease in our budget up to about a $13 million decrease in our budget. And unfortunately, it doesn't hit evenly. The biggest hit actually will come to our Public Works Department for all of our road work and transit. And the next biggest area that would be hit is health. And it seems kind of ironic given the current public health emergency, but anything from the funding for our clinics that provides care of last resort for anyone in the community and high quality care, I might also add, but also behavioral health, mental health, all of the public health services. So it's a very funny time where there are incremental budget add-ons coming in from both the federal and the state government, but also potentially some hits right where we need them the most. Lastly, both our parole and probation and our juvenile department and the drug court would probably also see hits because all of them are dependent on state funding to a greater or lesser degree.
Thank you. That's a bit disheartening. Thank you. Kate, I'm going to bounce back to you. For viewers that don't know what you do, could you give us like a 60-second thumbnail of the life of the Economic Development Manager?
Yeah, you bet, you bet. So our office, the Corvallis County Economic Development Office, we do our economic development work, as Zan said, for both the city of Corvallis and all of Benton County. And so normally before COVID, a lot of our work was about outreach to our traded sector businesses, supporting them. We manage the enterprise zones for the county. We also manage the new urban renewal district for the city. And a lot of our work, though, is really being a liaison and kind of being the hub of the wheel, if you will, and engaging with our partners, some of whom are on this call, Brad, folks from the Chamber, DCA, to get them the resources they need and the information they need. Since the COVID-19 crisis started, our entire team has pivoted only to be working on the economic recovery efforts and all the work that's going along with that. And so for us, it's really been communication. So we hold twice weekly calls with all of our partners to disseminate the information to them, but also kind of to hear the information from the ground up so we can be sure that we're responding to businesses' needs. And then that information flow continues up the food chain to both our city councilors, our county commissioners, but then straight up to the governor's office. Our office is a part of a task force they put together for our region. So we're on calls with them, and again, trying to get the needs and challenges straight up the line. So all of our policymakers at the different levels, including even our federal partners, can be responding to the needs of businesses in Benton County.
That's great. From what you've seen, what are our community's small businesses experiencing right now?
And I'm sorry, can you repeat that one time?
Sure. From what you've gathered, what are our community's small businesses experiencing right now?
Oh, what are they experiencing? Well, that'll be a great question for Pat too. We can tell you firsthand. I think my observation initially was, of course, a lot of anxiety and uncertainty, waiting to see what and if the federal government was going to do something. And then, quite frankly, in some ways, this is a health crisis, but it's also a crisis of too much information. So I saw then our small businesses struggling to paw through mountains of information, trying to figure out, should they apply for the PPE or should they apply for the EIDL loan? At what point is it forgivable? And so really this crisis of trying to get clarity of information. And we helped to try and solve that as best we could through a lot of our partnerships, like with the Foundry and doing online business forums and providing information. I think at this point in time, a lot of uncertainty about, one, whether or not should they open, should they not open, how can they reopen and be safe? I think everybody in this community wants to do their best to be open, but to be safe, and really trying to get the information they need. But I see Pat's face, and he can tell you straight from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, Pat, do you want to chime in now, or?
Sure. I'm glad it's the horse's mouth and not the other end. Thank you for that, Kate. Yeah, businesses are very uncertain, and they're all in different positions because businesses are different, just like people are. They're at different stages in their life cycle. And they're in different financial positions. Some of them have more money going into the thing than not. Some of them are more affected by the nature of their business. If they were considered essential businesses, they may not have gotten hurt as much. Some are actually doing very well. I don't know about Main Street businesses so much as the Amazons of the world that are doing well, but you're going to see a lot of little businesses go away and as a result of this. And the longer it goes on, the more those businesses will go away, which leaves us with some really kind of fundamental questions about how is it that downtown is going to come back, and other businesses that inhabit our area. What will downtown look like if retail moves to online purchases, because people will get into habits that they will maintain. Lots and lots of questions. And so for the individual businessman and woman, it's it's still up in the air. And you mentioned the PPP loans as an example. The SBA just came out with some guidance, I think 2 nights ago now, but they're making noise like this is not the end of it. Treasury still kind of hangs over the top of them, and they've got some ideas that are evolving simply because people are recognizing the limitations of the program that has been spun out, which was very quickly just trying to shovel liquidity into the system. So they're going to have lots and lots of questions going forward as they get into the forgiveness part of this thing, which is really where a lot of people are trying to figure out, well, how can I spend this money if I have it? And there's really a ton of money that's been made available, even locally. I know, and I don't really speak for Citizens Bank, but I know that they've done over 700 loans in their system in a matter of a couple of weeks, which is huge. It's like 10 times the normal volume. They're pumping in just into Philomath and to Corvallis over $26 million to support businesses, but businesses have to be able to spend that money in a way that won't become a loan around their neck in 8 weeks. So lots of uncertainty. People are very anxious about where it goes from here. Many people who have put their lives into businesses see them kind of on the edge and going away on them. So, you know, we all have different roles to play in all of this. But I think how you view it depends very much on where you sit.
Absolutely. Thank you. Kate, one more question for you. Do you have any suggestions for viewers that own businesses beyond the resources you've already talked about?
I think I would echo what Commissioner Ojiro indicated, which is really thinking about reopening responsibly. This isn't a race. People, just because Benton County has opened and you are able to open does not mean you need to. I think take the time to make sure that you've got the personal protective equipment, that you've got the policies, the procedures in place, so that you can open safely. And if you need, call upon us to make sure that you've got the resources you need. I will say, somebody had asked me kind of what my biggest fear is. And while we are so enthusiastic about the potential of getting our businesses back online, my biggest fear is that we have the potential to move backwards through this, to go back to a space where things are no longer open. And I think everybody's thinking about the governor's reopening plan. You know, it's numbered 1, 2, 3. I think of it as this really nice forward trend. But the reality is that if we are not all vigilant about the public health guidelines that Commissioner Ojiro and others have talked about, face coverings, washing hands, physical distancing, if we don't do that, there is a possibility that we'll have to move back. And instead of moving to phase 2, perhaps we go back to phase 0. And that's the piece that I just really, really keeps me up at night worrying for our businesses. So I think that's just the piece that I would add, Stevie.
Makes sense to me. Thank you. Brad, I'm going to move over to you now. And again, Brad Addig is the CEO of the Corvallis Foundry Collective. Brad, if you could just give our viewers kind of a rundown of what you do at the Foundry.
Sure. Well, we have a couple of roles here. So one, we run Corvallis Foundry, which is a shared workspace in a Main Street innovation hub. And that is obviously taking a hit because of the fact that we don't have as many members coming up here and using our facilities right now. And that part of our business is really an earned income model where members pay to be able to access the space. We're starting to see some members come back in, and we've taken a number of steps throughout this process to make the location much more safe. We're owned and operated by Foundry Collective, which is a nonprofit that focuses on helping spur innovation in smaller and rural communities. Although we don't really look at Corvallis as a rural community, it is a smaller community relative to what we see with the resources at a Bend or a Eugene or Portland. So we launched Let's Keep Connected. That was one of the first things we did. Was we saw a lot of people doing webinars, a lot of people doing presentations. We said we wanted something that was a little more casual and conversational. We've had 34 of those Let's Keep Connected. We'd have today we had Representative Rayfield on talking specifically about the state budget and the impact it could have on the communities here. We've had Senator Merkley, we've had people from the SBA, we've had local business owners, we've had subject matter experts trying to provide access to resources. Kate is a constant a partner in this, and her office has been a partner, Corvallis Benton County Economic Development Office. The Lynn Benton Community College SBDC has been a huge supporter of this and a great resource for small businesses. So our model is a little interesting in that, one, we're delivering resources and workshops and programs to Eastern Oregon and other communities, and we feel that those needs for what those communities are looking for are similar to what our Main Street people are looking for as well.
Perfect. Is there a way to watch those sessions online?
Sure. You can go to crowdcast.io/Let's Keep Connected. We have 4 or 5 of them coming up this week and next week. In fact, tomorrow at 10 a.m., we'll have Let's Keep Connected reopening Benton County. So at 10 to 11, Kate will be there with, I believe, Patrick Rowland, City of Corvallis Public Information Officer, and Bill Imminger, the Benton County Environmental Health Manager. So tomorrow at 10, if you want to know more about reopening and have your questions answered, I would certainly log into that one. Once you log in, you can sign up and get notifications of new ones. You can also go to letskeepconnected.org, which is a website where we try to keep it updated with all of the upcoming events as well.
Awesome. Thanks for doing those. In your view, since you interact with a lot of people who have small businesses, do you have any kind of reflection on what they're experiencing right now?
Well, I think we're coming through the shock, okay, and everybody's beginning to look forward. Obviously, no one knew what to do during the shock period, and no one really knows what to do in the looking forward period. This is all new, unproven, untested ground for us. I want to emphasize what Kate said about the importance of opening safely, okay? All of the surveys out there show that 75 to 80% of the general population wants to make sure they're going someplace where they're going to be safe. Safety is still the number one level of importance. And that means for a small business, not only taking the safety steps, but making sure your customers feel safe. So overemphasizing, distancing, physical distancing, overemphasizing hand washing and masks and everything, plexiglass barriers, personal protection equipment, making sure that your customers feel safe, because as we go through this roller coaster, they're going to remember the businesses that really went above and beyond to keep them safe. So that's one. Secondly, even in difficult times, businesses have to stop for a second and business owners need to stop and lift their heads up and say, okay, I need to look forward some, because everybody's really head down right now trying to figure out how do I pay my lease or my rent? How do I pay my utilities? How do I get an employee back? Or how do I protect my employees from safety? And it's important to kind of stop and say, okay, up until this happened, I had a customer and this were the services or the products or what I was doing, and my business was going well, and I was providing them with what they needed, but their needs have changed today. Okay, as much as the business environment has changed, the environment for what customers and individuals need has changed even greater. So you may need to really think about how do you pivot, and not just delivery of your existing services or your existing products, but what can those be as we move forward? This is going to impact the way we do business long term. So start thinking about, okay, what unique value propositions do I have to deliver to either my old existing customers or new customers? This is an opportunity where if you don't do it well, you're going to lose your customer base. but someone else might lose their customer base, and you might be able to fill back into what their needs are. So we've been doing some workshops. We're going to roll them out again. It's really about, who is your customer today? What are their pains and what are their fears today versus what they were yesterday? And what might that look like in the future? So, I know it's really challenging to tell someone to lift your head up and look at the next 3 to 6 to 9 months, but I think it's going to be critical for the businesses that do in fact emerge. If they've been able to do some of that, they're going to be able to emerge stronger and more stable than they were prior to this. Not all are going to emerge. I recognize that. Pat said it first, but I echo that. We are going to lose small businesses. But also keep in mind, this is an economic disaster that's being driven by Main Street businesses. That's not what normally happens. Normally you have a sector collapse in a region or in an area, timber collapses or the mine or the water runs out or something happens and a sector collapses and it impacts other sectors. This economic impact is all being driven on the backs of our small business people who create most of the jobs and probably they have less resources to really respond to this. So just bear in mind, support local as much as you can, and keep these businesses dear to your heart.
Absolutely. Speaking of resources, last question, do you have any other resources you can think of for people with small businesses to access?
Well, I think that if you have not spoken to a small business development business advisor, get on the horn with one of them. They're doing phenomenal things. They've become experts very quickly on the EIDL loans and the paycheck protection programs and other grants and other resources. So they also can help you look at your business plans, figure out some creative ways on your finances. They can help with marketing plans. They can help you with an incredible amount of resources. And I think what we're seeing, we've underfunded things like the Small Business Development Center for years and years and years, and we're paying for it now, okay? We've underfunded support for small businesses, and we're paying for it now. But they're the first place I would reach out to right now and say, hey, can you help me? And they're busy too, okay? So keep reaching out to them. But you can also email me, and I am happy to help connect you with anybody that you might need in specific areas.
Thanks, Brad. Pat, I'm going to move over to you now. Again, Pat Lampton is the owner of the Inkwell, which is a store downtown. Really cool store, by the way. So first, from a retailer's perspective, what have you needed to do in terms of being open to the public?
Well, we've been doing curbside delivery for the last couple of weeks or few weeks. Friday, we opened our doors to people, and we did all of the things Brad's talking about. We have a whole list, a procedural list for our own employees. They're all masked up. They sanitize things regularly, all of the door handles and merchandise as it comes up. We have produced sneeze screens for all of the register stations. We're kind of in a unique position in that we've got like 21,000 square feet of just retail floor area. So the whole social distancing thing isn't as big of a problem for us as it might be for a smaller business that's say maybe 1,500 square feet and it's full of fixtures and whatever. So everybody's going to react to this differently. We put the arrows on the floor so we direct people where they have to go. We've refixtured the store in terms of how it is that we have people view merchandise. We've eliminated a lot of fixtures to provide wider aisles. Just a whole lot of new procedure for us. And I think it's a pretty safe environment. That, and we sign the heck out of everything so people understand that they should be paying attention to the social distance thing. We're asking that they wear masks. We're not requiring that they wear masks. I would say most people are wearing masks at this point. So it's a challenge, but we're meeting it. I don't think it's an unreasonable challenge put on people. And I think, you know, at some point we've got to enter into this phase where we're welcoming people back into sort of the normal part of their life. The early adopters of shopping coming back in seem to be glad that they can have that experience again and get the things that they need. So we're hopeful that this will build.
Definitely. As a board member at a local business bank and economic advisory board member, what challenges do you see for local businesses? And there's a second part to that question. Go ahead.
Well, lots of challenge because the biggest challenge is it's all unknown. You know, what's going to happen in 6 weeks, and are the direst of predictions where we get back into a hotspot situation here in Benton County, or we never really had one here, but we could, in which case we'd have to close our doors again and kind of go through the same anxious period or whatever. Is it going to raise its ugly head in the fall? So there's this sea of doomsayers out there, and they are in conflict with the sea of people who think it's a hoax to begin with. So lots of opinion. And that can't help but make it into your psyche, you know, regardless of where you are and what role you play in this. We're all thinking about the same kinds of things and viewing them a little bit differently. So lots of challenges for business, not the least of which is money. And I think that's what the whole SBA program is about. That is what banks are into right now in terms of forbearance on loans. I know almost all of the banks are contacting their customers and allowing them to make their loans interest only for existing loans, or completely deferring to the end of their loan for a period of time. So they're rewriting tons of loans right now. Bankers are very, very busy people, but it's really what the lifeblood of businesses are, is cash flow. And cash flow for lots of these little businesses, they live hand to mouth. It's much like the rest of the population. Some people are secure. You know, if you're retired, you have the check coming in, or you have a job where you haven't personally had to respond economically to this situation, other than maybe being a little anxious about it. It's way different than if you are the guy who gets his paycheck and he's relying on that to pay his rent this month or to buy his food this month. They're thinking about all of this in much, much different, starker terms than a lot of us who can sit back and be a little more abstract about it. And so I think I'd keep it in mind, and that applies to businesses.
Right, definitely. And lastly, do you have any suggestions or resources for our viewers that own businesses, especially for consumer-facing businesses like restaurant or retail?
Well, I think they've got to get their financial house in order, and if they don't already have a relationship with a good accountant and a banker, as an example, they ought to develop those things. That ought to be a part of every business life. Is that part of it? Kate's office is a terrific resource for people. The chamber is a terrific resource. And you were talking earlier about contacts that people can make for information. You can go on either of their websites and get a whole laundry list of really great links to all kinds of things. And they've been doing webinars on topics. And the ones that I've listened to have been really excellent. If you're trying to educate yourself and try and see your way clear about how to navigate these waters, there's probably something there that you can hang your hat on.
Thank you. And thank you all for answering our questions. I'm going to turn it over to Steve now to address the audience questions and answers.
We do have audience questions. Again, thank you all for being willing to participate. And then for those viewers that wish to ask a question, you can email us at CitySpeak@corvallisadvocate.com, or you can go to our Facebook page, find the live stream that is there, because we're live streaming on our site and on Facebook. And you can comment there with a question, or however you would like. Okay, one of the questions that's obviously come up, and we spoke about it prior to starting. There was quite the spate of vandalism over the weekend. Probably did tens of thousands of dollars worth of damage. It's incredible how much damage one individual wrought in a short period of time. There's several questions about this. I'll just get right into them. Where can businesses turn to get some help? You know, they've got this $1,000 deductible or whatever they'll have in their insurance policy that will cover some of this. But where can they turn for, I mean, they're just getting back on their feet. Every $5 counts, and you've got a $1,000 deductible. You know, does anybody have any sense of where these businesses can turn for some funding?
Hey, Steve. So it's Kate.
Yeah.
I'll jump in, and I think Brad's got some information on this too. But a couple thoughts. I mean, like you, we were just, I mean, you can see it. Everybody, we were just sickened by this. It's just incredibly frustrating. I do know that Jennifer Moreland from the Downtown Corvallis Association put together a GoFundMe when we checked this morning, they were looking to raise $10,000, and I think they're past $13,000, which I found so heartening, just the way that our community members have stepped up to try and help these businesses with their deductibles or whatever they need to get the windows and get back into business. It would be heart-wrenching at any point in time, but right now it's just especially egregious, in my opinion. I did want to let you know, too, there was an update given to City Council, so I can share that the person who was apprehended will remain in custody, certainly through the 21st of May. We will see if he remains in custody or is released after that. We don't know yet. This is also a person that was a known quantity, both in the city of Albany as well as Corvallis. So Corvallis Police Department is aware of this. I spoke with the police chief about increasing some of the patrols in the downtown area during this time as well. So I know
we'll
the city.
We're certainly going to be getting to some question about protection of the community. There's been several questions around that have come in.
Yeah,
you can
but I think my short answer is I think right now the GoFundMe would be incredibly helpful to help these businesses specifically get back on their feet.
Pat, it looked like you had something to add.
Yeah, I wanted to re-emphasize the whole GoFundMe thing. And another note on that. I think it's an indication of what people think of their downtown and the fact that they're trying to support these businesses, and the depth of knowledge around the citizens in general about the depth of the problem here for a lot of these little businesses, and they're trying to do what they can and to raise, and I think it's up, probably 15,000 or something at this point at least. It's higher than that, Zan?
Yeah, looking at it now, 19,447.
Okay, well, that's pretty neat, isn't it? That people in a time when they're uncertain about their finances are wanting to do something, and they see this for what it is, which is just a individual, senseless, foolish thing. Sorry that it had to happen at this particular time.
Pat, I want to piggyback on what you said about the commitment to this community, to its downtown. And I think as tragic as this was, it provides a spark and an opportunity for all of us to circle the wagons more around our downtown area. We've been pushing, and I've had conversations with Kate and Simon and Jennifer about, we have a lot of extra parking spaces. We have a lot of very small locations that can't physically distance. How can we expand, into some outside areas? Can we look at, these parking spot pods that other communities have done through Main Street that you can put out in front of a coffee shop that takes up a couple parking spaces, and suddenly, you know what, it doubles or triples their footprint. So, you know, our commitment to our downtown, I mean, I would love to see on every single corner of every single street reminders in giant big signs and letters, maintain physical distancing, you know. We have an opportunity here to take what's happening with us and reimagine our downtown area and our downtown use. Do we need all of these streets that are 2 lanes wide with 2 rows of parking spaces and 2 sidewalks when you can't physically distance on a sidewalk right now safely? How can we look at some of these things and say, what do we need to lean in short term to really make our downtown the safest and most inviting space it possibly can be, so that people can continue to shop and support our downtown merchants? So I'm hoping that, you know, some of these things might help us spur some outside. I don't like to use the word outside the box, because around here we say there is no box, okay? But how can we look and say, what can we be doing here to support our communities? And then a little bit further, how do we exemplify what a community of our size can do and be? Because we're going to see a deurbanization, okay, in the next 18 to 36 months. We're going to see remote workers wanting to go to smaller communities, and we are an incredibly attractive community. So there are things we can be doing now that can help us, I believe, pull up out of this faster if we can embrace a more vibrant, and I don't know how to use the word vibrant and say physical distancing at the same time, but there has to be a way to do it. So those would be, I think you hit the nail on the head. People love our downtown. They want to support us, as evidenced by the $19,000 in the GoFundMe to replace glass. What can we do next step to make this downtown even more appealing?
And Steve, if I could jump in on that, Brad is one of the partners that we work with that's on these calls, and so we've heard loud and clear the suggestions that he and others have made that he's just mentioned. I can't go into details on this now, but I would tell the folks viewing that we've heard that, and we are working as we speak on some pretty cool, creative solutions. So please stay tuned. We're hoping we can implement some of these right away and do exactly what Brad's saying, and have a vibrant yet physically distanced space in the core of our communities, and not just downtown Corvallis, but solutions that could work as well in Philomath and Monroe too. So yeah, thanks.
And I want to move on for a moment and talk about the same questions being asked in several different ways. Can the city or county be doing more to protect its downtown businesses? Being frank, I believe a number of these questions are coming from individuals in the community that have had long-term concerns for the well-being of downtown and a perceived lack of enforcement. But there have been several questions along those lines on social media. And I guess first I will go to Zan, see if you have any input. Your county, not city, but you have some sense of the issues in the community.
Well, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, we know we have a couple of real significant systemic challenges here in the community. One of those is the fact that we have a jail that doesn't have the capacity to hold people for offenses that are not person-to-person crimes. And right now, we are in a particularly challenged position because we also are practicing physical distancing and hygiene measures in the jail, just like everyone else is. So it's difficult. I asked this morning whether or not we were going to be able to hold this individual, and the answer is hopefully yes through that hearing date. so that we can then figure out what's next. My other goal is to see a crisis resource center in this community where we can, it's an alternative to jail. It's an alternative to the emergency room, where folks that have serious mental health issues that really don't need to be incarcerated can have a respite up to 30 days. And I think it's a resource that we dearly need. It's going to be a challenge given the finances at the state level and the county level right now to institute that kind of a program. It'll be a big lift, but we are planning on it in the context of our criminal justice system's work, both from a facilities perspective and a program perspective. But that's not going to take care of anything right away. That is the biggest challenge in my mind, is that there are no quick answers. There's no quick fix. It's not like we can flip a switch and make a difference. And in this case, and in this instance of vandalism, I think one of the answers is that we need to be back out in our downtown. We need to be there with many eyes and many people, so that there isn't as much opportunity for this kind of an event to occur.
Now, Pat, you've long-term operated a business downtown. Being frank, I think a lot of us, we go downtown, we go where we're going to go, we leave. We don't know what the microcurrents are like and what it is to operate down there. From the perspective of operating a downtown location over the course of years, one, have things changed in the last several years, and what are you feeling are some of the missing pieces in terms of, as people seem to perceive it, protecting the downtown infrastructure and businesses? Is that how you see it even?
Well, downtown serves a lot of purposes, and one default, I think, has been that it gets the homeless population has been homeless downtown as much as any place in the city for a variety of reasons, and so that's a continuing issue, and it's a problem. And as Zan has said, it's not an easy solution, but it's been with us for years now, and we fund the conversation, but we haven't done anything that has made a difference from the perspective of the people who work downtown, the people who want to visit downtown, other than making it less welcoming and attractive. And then you pile on the fact that there's a great deal of competition for retail trade online and other options for people, which makes the environment less attractive for businesses to be in. It makes it more difficult for landlords to do anything because they can't command the rent that's required to make improvements. So it's sort of this cycle, I think, that we're in, which isn't to say that it's, has always been rosy. In the 70s, I can remember it was really nasty downtown. You had to do lots of things, and we got together and we made the Downtown Corvallis Association, and that started in the early 80s, I believe. It was spun off of the chamber, and so there's a current effort, I think, by Kate's office and by the Downtown Association to start up a discussion about what is it that we want downtown. I mean, what does this community want? If it wants a downtown, which is a great place for people to go, a center of activity, a place where you can be entertained, a place where you can have a choice of good restaurants, where there still remains some retail businesses where you can live. We've all been to charming downtowns, and they're charming because people invested in them and because they decided, well, this is where we're going to plant our flag. And then we've also had the flip side experience of going to places that look like they've been bombed out. They have let them go. They have gone for the shiny mall on the outskirts and it blew out their downtowns. And now they're having to come back and reinvest in these places at great expense to try and bring them back. Well, I think we have an opportunity here as a community to say, okay, we want something different. We want something that reflects our community. And downtowns are the face of lots of communities. When you are a visitor in a strange town, you almost always go downtown and get an impression about that town from its downtown. So I would welcome the broadening of that discussion out, and for us to make a plan about where we're going to take downtown. What reasonable purpose can downtown be made to? How can we clear the way? What role is government in all of this? You know, just lots of open questions. I'm sorry I kind of got off from your regular thing, but I do have a passion about downtown. It's been a good deal of my life down.
And Pat, you've been there for so long and you're thoughtful about it, and I knew that you would be. So thank you for actually, in some ways, the length of the answer gave it some comprehensiveness, and I appreciate it. Brad or Kate, do you have anything to add, or shall I move to the next question?
No, I think Pat summed it up. It's a matter of saying what we want our downtown to look like. We are in my opinion, an existential threat of what downtown is. And we have a pathway to say, let's reinvigorate it, let's change it, and let's make something out of this that we feel good about. This is going to lift. This cloud is going to lift. But this is an opportunity for us. There are no. Let's take advantage of that.
Yeah, and Steve, I would just say, couldn't agree more with those guys. And of course, with the 10 years I spent in Albany and helping them bring their downtown back, it's, as Pat said, it's the heart of the community, and we've got an enormous opportunity here to do something really special.
Okay, I'll go ahead and move to the next set of questions. We got most of that. This one is an interesting one, and Brad, I almost think that you're the right person to start with, but then we'll move on. So, longtime reader Ralph Pinanori asked, obviously there are going to be businesses that are negatively impacted. Some are going to be going away. Is there, with all that has happened, some opportunity for the startup of greener businesses to evolve out of those businesses? Is there an opportunity for some industries that could be operating in a greener way to evolve? So why don't I give you a moment to speak to that, and I'll have a follow-up.
Well, one, we're greener when we buy local. Okay, that's the simplest, easiest pathway for us to green, is to buy local, is to cut our carbon footprint by bringing in products from outside. And you know, for a long time, the economic mentality has been in this state, this county, every other county, every other state has been traded sector, traded sector, traded sector. And we've somewhat ignored a little bit of our leakage. And now you're beginning to look and say, okay, part of an economic recovery plan is how do we eliminate our leakage? How do we quit bringing things in from outside that we can in fact produce here and consume here locally? So that's the first step to greenness, is to not allow all of our economic dollars to go to Amazon. Okay, it's to figure out how do we keep those dollars here. The second thing I believe, if we want to do that, is supporting our smaller, our small businesses that operate on the periphery, that don't have access necessarily to the resources, and how do we get them access to resources? So we have lots of artisans, craftspeople, makers, lots of very small retailers that are all trying to go online. Well, if we have 100 people go online, we have 100 very small websites with, you know, no traffic on any of them. Can we bundle? Can we bring together and create marketplaces? Can we create market access for our local businesses outside our barriers so that we can also bring some money in? So one, buy local, shop local, consume locally. Okay, that's green. Secondly, support the smaller ones and twos and the makers and the creators who are typically, in most cases, the people that lead economic recoveries in blighted areas. help support those that have the least access or the most disadvantaged to markets and help create markets for them. And those would be my two recommendations.
And then Kate, I'd like to move to you. You deal so much in traded sector. You probably have some awareness of what businesses that we currently have that are operating in an enhanced state of sustainability. And you may have some sense of what businesses are looking at Corvallis and how things may evolve to a greener practice in some of the industries. So I'll put the question to you as well. As businesses evolve or leave, unfortunately leave, is there space for evolution of a greener type of business sector within this community?
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, and it's interesting. I love what Brad had to say about the shopping local. It is interesting, of course, the reason, and I'm a full supporter of what Brad said for sure also, and of the downtowns and all that good stuff. The reason we talk a lot about trade sector, of course, is the notion of bringing businesses selling their products outside the area and bringing outside dollars from outside the region into our area. I think in my perfect world, we have this great balance of green manufacturers selling their goods and services outside the area, but a very strong buy local ethos, which I think in a lot of ways we do have right now. So to answer your question though, Steve, definitely, as we emerge from this emergency, I think that's the times in history that you look back and you've seen just sort of these leaps forward in thought, in the way, in the processes, the way things are done. And I think it's going to be the same if there are businesses that are not able to hang on or stay around. I don't know a more innovative, forward-thinking community than Corvallis and Benton County, and our commitment to the environment. This is the place where ideas like that, forward-thinking ways of doing things, can certainly take hold. If you can't make ideas like that work in Corvallis, Benton County, then I don't know where, right? And so I think. And it was funny when I came to work here, this notion of a balance of business support, but in a way that's forward thinking, in a way that takes advantage of green technologies, innovations with science, new ways of doing things. We have such an amazing university and institution here in our community, capturing the research that's coming out of there and translating that into business ideas. So that's a long-winded way of saying, yeah, I totally think we can emerge from this and do that.
Okay.
Also, Kate, we probably will find ourselves to be an attractive location for some businesses to come here. Okay, we're going to see a flight from bigger urban centers, and particularly with how beautiful our outlying areas are. You head down towards Monroe, or you go over to Philomath, or you go north from here. We have a county that's ripe for an opportunity for these smaller green business startups with the amount of technology and resources that we have here. So we may be looking a little bit to think a little more of attraction, and that's kind of been a nasty word for a while in economic development.
Yeah, no, Brad's totally right. And Steve, if you want an example, I mean, this isn't a new line of business, but I would tell you that the CSA boxes for farms that had been really working to kind of gain traction. There were a lot of people that were like, I don't know, what about this? I'm just going to go to Winco and get my produce. And now, though, with the prevalence of deliveries, the CSA method of getting these fresh local foods, which, hello, we're in the heart of the Willamette Valley, and getting those delivered to your door has really, pardon the pun, but taken root. And I think that's one cool example of an industry that is going to come out of this, is already stronger, is going to come out of it stronger, and continue to underscore a local way of shopping, a local way of thinking about our food and feeding people and supporting our local farmers as well.
It is. We've been covering CSAs for a long time, and it is interesting how that has come to the fore recently, not just here, but really throughout the country. It's interesting to watch. I'll move on to the next question. Unless, Pat, did you have something to say, or were you?
No, I think they're right. If it can fly any place, it can fly here in Corvallis, Oregon, because we
Yeah,
have those ideas about things and we can afford it. I guess the other thing that I would add might be that we got to encourage people to buy less but buy better. And you know, there's a whole range of goods out there, and some of them are more expensive to buy initially, but they last longer and they work better through their life cycle, and they're cheaper in the long run. So I think that's a good buy quality to begin with.
Yeah, okay, and thank you for that, Pat. I think it is that old saying, buy nice or buy twice.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go ahead and move on to the next tranche of questions. How, and this one is difficult, and I don't know if there's a good answer for it. How can consumers, on a kind of almost shop by shop, or at least sector by sector basis, be informed as to the requirements of different businesses that they will be visiting? Websites are not always updated. People often don't update their social media. And apparently, folks are going in. At least a couple of individuals have commented, they'll go into a business only to run into, wait, these are the requirements to be here, and I didn't know that. Are there any thoughts on that? They're not, the questioners have not been specific as to the businesses that they had visited. Anybody want to take a run at that one?
Yeah, Steve, I'll go first, and the others can chime in as well. Our office, when things were starting to close down, our office put together a list of businesses in partnership with Visit Corvallis and Brad and the Chamber and everybody. And we have that available through our website, yescorvallis.org. It's in the resources section. And what we're doing now, though, is updating that with the businesses now that are reopening. And we're working to include information on there about requirements that they might have. We're just getting the requirements piece going. But I think it's important because it is different depending on where you go, what they need you to do. And in terms of staying safe, I think, Steve, to your point, of course, is just, again, back to some of these basics in terms of being cognizant about social distancing, wearing face coverings, making sure you as a patron are washing your hands and keeping your distance and being safe, all of that. So the others may want to chime in too.
Does anybody else have anything to add to what Kate just put out?
You can always call a business and say, what's up?
Brad?
Well, I would like, and this is a personal observation, I would like to see a better overall emphasis in our community of some messaging coming out that says, look, we as a community recommend that unless you have a medical condition, wear a face mask to protect the employees of the retail establishments you're going shopping in. I'd like to see more big signs on windows and doors and street corners that say practice physical distancing. I'd like to see a more concerted, because right now, and there's no, I'm not pointing fingers or faults at anyone. We're in a real uncharted area, but I think that would help immensely, because a lot of people, yeah, you can call the business, you can go online and maybe the website's updated or Google My Business is updated or not, but you come down here and you do want to shop and you walk in and someone's saying, we're requiring masks. Well, then have free masks available at the door for your patrons, or have big signs. And I'm seeing places with like 8.5 by 11-inch signs in the windows, and 3 or 4 people are leaning in trying to figure out what it says, which is not really very safe. So I would just, if we could get more of a branding messaging campaign out there as a community, saying, hey, we believe in this, we support this. I was reading an article about the 1918 pandemic, and when they started requiring masks in Indianapolis, everybody was making fun of how fun they were to wear and who was making the funnest ones. And it was a different animal. And I know we're in a different time today, but let's embrace it. We should be wearing masks. Let's embrace it. Let's make fun of it. Let's see who has anybody got a Pokemon mask. I just gave away my superhero mask, but let's try to communicate that the best way to come and the best way to interact is a safe way to interact.
And then Zan, I'll kind of move along over to you, Zan. But I kind of want to kind of think about this question a little different way. We do know there has been some situations where there's been some crowded situations since things, quote unquote, reopened. One particular restaurant by campus apparently, was crowded as per usual. Incidents like that. Is there a point at which county health or the county starts to intervene, and is there a point at which the county starts to intervene?
That's an excellent question, and it's one that I've asked a couple of times in my role. And at this point in time, the intervention that we are most likely to take is education. It's to approach that group of people and ask people to move along or to create more physical distance, but not to take any enforcement actions. Our environmental health staff, for instance, that work with restaurants on a regular basis when it comes to doing kitchen inspections or restaurant inspections, will be going out into the community and providing support, but not any kind of legal guidance to businesses as they reopen. But we don't anticipate any citations about physical distancing, for instance. We're in a difficult spot. All of the guidance that's coming from the governor's office on a sector basis is just that. It's guidance. They're not regulations. They don't have any force of law. We are literally all in this together, as we keep saying, and it's up to each one of us to honor each other and to honor the community by practicing physical distancing and hand washing and wearing face coverings. There's not an official mandate, and no one is forcing anyone to do it. And it's a fine line that the governor is treading in this arena, and I believe that just about every jurisdiction in the state is walking that same line, really trying to talk about community.
Now,
what we're doing is for one another.
Right. Now, at some point, there were executive orders in place, and there were lines you could cross and be cited, yes?
I am not aware of citations, certainly not in Benton County, and I'm not aware of them in other places either in Oregon. I'm only aware of citations in Washington State, in Hawaii, and other jurisdictions.
Okay, moving along. The next question, well, I'm going to skip ahead for just a moment. Another question that it's kind of a natural corollary for that. We have already heard this fairly widespread suggestion that there will probably be a second spike in cases sometime along fall or winter. Nobody's precise on the timing. Perhaps there will be a spike in cases with everything reopening. Well, is there a point at which things need to close back up, and what are the metrics to make that decision? I guess is the first question. And then, so what are the metrics to make that decision if need be? And then what would one suggest to businesses that are preparing for that potential eventuality? And, I'm going to move to, first, Zan, is there a point at which orders could go back out to close things?
Yes. And it's the last thing any of us want to see. The foremost criterion is whether or not we are able to conduct contact tracing for 95% of the positive tests within 24 hours. And if we're not able to do that, what that means is that we have a surge that's beyond our ability to contain and control. And I think that we have quite a lot of capacity here now. We have a total of 24 contact tracers trained. We'd be probably deploying about 15 at a time. We want to have people in reserve so we can give those people a break as the weeks go by. But I'm just crossing my fingers that we don't get to that point. I have to say that my biggest concern, frankly, is if and when OSU opens up. I think that in some ways it's our biggest opportunity in terms of economic recovery, because it's a lot of people that shop and play and eat in this community. But it's also a risk factor for this community, with a lot of people living in close proximity, spending time in close proximity in classes and so forth. So Oregon State University is at the table. We talk with folks at OSU at the Emergency Operations Center regularly. But I think that we need to be coordinating really closely as we move forward through the next few months.
Then there's also a component to that decision making, if I recall. There's also a component that talks about the capacity of the hospital. What is that? Do you, off the cuff, recall what that is?
I don't recall the precise metric, but we have been very far under our ICU, our intensive care unit capacity so far with respect to COVID cases. And even now that we are seeing other kinds of cases more regularly in the hospital, we still have plenty of intensive care unit beds. One of the things I feel that has put us in a much better position, and one of the questions the state asked when we applied to reopen, is whether we had plans for a variety of scenarios. And our emergency operations team between the city of Corvallis and Benton County have put together some really solid plans for alternative care sites, for instance, places to house people that are COVID positive that don't have homes, places for people to quarantine if they can't risk going back home to their families. So I feel that we are in a position where we could handle a certain amount of surge and a certain amount of increase in cases in the community.
Okay,
But
and then, right, yeah.
there are
then,
specific criteria, but they also leave a fair bit of leeway, even interpretation of those criteria. So, but there is a document at the governor's website that we can point you to afterwards if people have more questions in that arena.
Great, good. Okay, and then Brad and Kate, I'll ask you a follow-up question to that. In your working with local businesses, are you suggesting to them that they have a plan in terms of what if there is, again, a closure? What happens then? Kate, Brad, which of you would like to go?
I'll jump in first, and I'll let Brad. Brad can also want to say something. The answer is definitively yes. And I think I said before, this is my biggest fear, is that we won't have this linear progression forward in opening, but that we will have to take a step back. And I know that is so hard for businesses to wrap their brains around as they're just thinking about reopening at this moment. But I think Pat made the point earlier too, is that forward thinking of trying to figure out what this might look like. My MO is expect the best, prepare for the worst. And the preparing for the worst part of this is having a plan whereby Benton County or other counties have to go back to a space of being closed again, and how they would weather that. It's incredibly important.
And then Brad.
I emphasize what I am traditionally a very optimistic person and always believe that we can innovate and find ways to get through our problems. I have seen businesses reopen irresponsibly in our community. and I've seen community members behaving irresponsible. I've also been heartened by seeing a large number of small businesses say, look, we know we could reopen, but we're going to take a week or two to figure this out so that we do it safely and we do it properly. And I applaud any business that is taking that time to really look at what it means to them and their business long term and their employees and their customers' safety. I think businesses have paid an inordinately high price already. To go back to having to close doors would be a death knell for a significantly greater amount of businesses than our ability to manage this going forward and ensure that businesses and our community members are acting appropriately. So I would love to see us walk softly, Zan, but carry a big stick. And I would like to see some enforcement out there with some of these businesses that are not necessarily doing well, because this isn't a matter of just someone getting away with something. This could threaten the lifeblood of tons of small businesses here. So I would like to see a little bit of, hey, if you're not doing this right, we're going to do more than simply recommend something. We're going to come down on you pretty hard because we need to set some examples. Sorry, but that's just my point of view.
Thank you, Brad. Does anybody else have anything to add on this question? Please.
If I could,
Yeah.
Steve, I'm sorry, I know I already spoke, but on the notion of enforcement, we have had that question come up a lot. And what Zan said was exactly accurate. I do know that right now the one arm of government that is doing enforcement is actually OSHA. So there's not a Benton County state level item; it's up at the state level. But if customers are in a business, if they feel unsafe, if employees feel unsafe, OSHA is their best channel forward in terms of enforcement type items at this point in time. And we're waiting on more guidance from the government on that, but OSHA is it at this point in time.
Pat, it looks like you have something to add.
Yeah, I've always got something to say. The enforcement thing, I think would be a really unfortunate thing, both from the perspective of needing to do it and then also kind of the heavy-handed look that it has. Benton County has done very well up to this point in terms of its distancing and following the rules, and I wouldn't expect that that's going to change a whole lot going forward. I think there might be some other things at play in terms of businesses opening up and when they choose to do it. They've had 5 weeks to prepare. They have pretty much known what was going to be required of them. We spent a lot of time during that period making the changes and getting the sneeze screens and the gloves and the masks and the disinfectant and rearranging things. And we didn't have any more information than anybody else. So maybe some other motives at play in terms of why it is that people are choosing to not reopen one way or another. And it's probably all over the board. It's personal philosophy. It's, they may have to go out of business and they just can't pull the plug yet, or who knows. But we've got to get back to it at some point. We've got to do it as safely as we possibly can. We have to reinforce in the idea of the customer that you are a safe place. I mean, they're going to the grocery store, for goodness sakes. And all of us are buying groceries. And that environment, as far as I'm concerned, is certainly no safer than most of the retail kinds of establishments, other retail establishments. So I think we can do this smartly. We may see an uptick, we may not. We don't know what's going to happen. That's the point.
Okay. And then the last question is one that I'll give you some preface to. I'm not totally clear what this questioner is exactly referring to. So my setup for the question may be imprecise. But there have been little grassroots efforts in our community that have been heartening. You see the sewing brigade that started from just kind of nowhere. You see IOU Corvallis, really big impact, kind of just started from the blue. The question this questioner has is, or this viewer has is there funding available, maybe even on a micro level, for grassroots efforts that are looking to support small local businesses. Is anybody aware of something like that? Kate, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm always jumping in. It's like a quiz show. I'm the first to buzz in, really. No, I will say, we, through the economic recovery team, the folks in our office, and through our work at the Emergency Operations Center, there's a round of funding that's about to come out through the state of Oregon for CDBG, Community Development Block Grant funds for the county, and there may be an opportunity to get some funds for either businesses or nonprofits that may want to help with making PPE or kind of being like, we believe, again, we're waiting for the final regulations, but we believe that perhaps funding could go to the Corvallis Sewing Brigade to buy them more fabric to make masks that could then be donated to businesses. And so we will be putting in an application for that on behalf of Benton County. And when that comes out, we're definitely going to spread the word far and wide to see if there's ways that our businesses and our nonprofits and just the small pop-up community groups that, like this viewer mentioned, can be supported to continue to do their great work, because it's just so heartening to see what these groups have done. So we're working on that.
Brad, do you have any awareness of funding that might be available like that?
Well, I think what we have seen so far is the generosity of our community funding a lot of these efforts. And I think what Kate said is probably our best bet going forward. There are some micro grants out there, but the minute they announce them, they're gone. There's 500 applicants for 50 micro grants. But we have seen, I know that the Corvallis Sewing Brigade had a GoFundMe that was at one point doing really, really well. I don't have anything else to add. I think looking at what these community block grants and things through Kate's office and going to Yes Corvallis and keeping on that website, and then coming into the Let's Keep Connected events and these events to keep informed are going to be the best way to learn what's coming down the pike.
Along those lines, and I'll take a co-moderator's prerogative for a moment. And Zan, do you just have any awareness of how many folks had applied for the county's grants so far?
Kate told me that number just a few minutes ago. We had actually.
Kate knows.
We had.
I do. I think the number is 12.
12.
And the thing that was really heartening, though, and Zan and I were just talking about it earlier this afternoon, was we had about a third of the applications were from minority-owned businesses, which was a priority for the commissioners and for our office, and about 25% were in our rural parts of Benton County, including Philomath as well as Monroe. And so we had this really nice diversity and array of recipients of the funds, and which was just heartening. And we know it wasn't a lot of money, but at this point we're figuring anything makes a difference. And I can't speak for Zan, maybe I should let her talk, but as a sometimes representative of the commissioners, I'm so incredibly proud that we were able to help some businesses.
And for viewers that may not be aware, what we're referring to is the county authorized $150,000 for very micro small business loans. Zan, did you have anything that you would add to that? Oh, Zan, you're muted. There you go.
I would say that partly because of the demographics of the folks that applied for this loan, we will be able to match this loan pool with money from Business Oregon, and the Economic Development Office. Kate and her team put in an application for those funds just a couple days ago. So I'm very excited about that as well. So we know not everyone needs funds all at the same time. There is going to be recurring need or new needs that will evolve, especially as people adapt their businesses to this new challenge. So just keep your eyes out on those resources that we've mentioned here today, the yescorvallis.org website, the Let's Keep Connected series, and you'll see other opportunities for assistance emerge.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you all. We'll all be speaking in a moment after we part from live audience. We'll all speak for a moment. Stevie, I'd like to Stevie Beiswanger, our editor-in-chief, I'd like to turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Steve. And thank you all so much for being here tonight and being on our panel. And also a shout out to the staff at the Corvallis Advocate, doing all the hard work during these uncertain times and getting us news and stories out, despite not having a print publication right now. And also a huge shout out to our supporters, our viewers. Thanks for being here. And that concludes this CitySpeak for tonight. Everyone have a good night.